All right, so this is only sort of what my office is doing, and sort of just general good information on how transit-oriented development works if you're living there on the ground and sort of trying to embrace it. So there's some misconceptions, and we've seen a little bit of that in presentations today even, but transit-oriented development does not have to be parking garages and 15-story hotels and office buildings. This is downtown Minneapolis, and this is sort of like what I think when I hear TOD, even as someone who just told you this isn't it. So there's no obligation to live in a high-rise. There's no obligation to never drive. There's no obligation to just like totally abandon what everyone you know would use as a normal lifestyle. Switching to Providence here. This is Federal Hill. You can see this little icon up here is actually my house. And this area has about 18,000 people per square mile. If you hear a number like that, what you think of is kind of high-rise housing. You think maybe like the denser neighborhoods in Boston, but it's not. I mean, I live in a house on a 1/10 of an acre or something like that. It has 8 people in it. That's what 18,000 people a square mile is. So there's sort of a misconception about density in general. This is totally dense. This area on Greg's map is dark red. This will support transit service every 10 minutes. And yeah, the final point I have on here is that it does just look like a historic village because, I mean, functionally it is one. So when we're talking about transit and what that can look like in an area that's historic and we don't want a lot of high-rise development anywhere. So the great news is that every urban area in Rhode Island predates the car. And most people did leave their house before the car. So essentially every municipality in Rhode Island was formerly connected with an interurban rail line. So these were something like glorified streetcars, but going from town to town. Yeah, and so a lot of the neighborhoods and sort of outlying communities really developed along these transit lines when the population started to grow around the turn of the century. And if you look at this map and you remember Greg's map, you'll see that a large number of RIPTA lines actually still follow approximately these trolley lines. All right, so getting on the ground here, this is downtown Warren. It is a historic village. I used to live in this picture. This is about 12,000 people per square mile. So even this is denser than the city average for the city of Providence. And on Greg's map, this one was sort of in the lighter red category. Not for the population density, but because there's just a lot less job opportunity. So it's as dense as an urban neighborhood. It contains, in this image, a variety of restaurants, entertainment venues, doctor's offices, jobs, a grocery store, a bike path, and I would argue the most useful RIPTA line in the state of Rhode Island. Route 60 goes down 114 here, and that connects Providence to Newport. There's a bus every 15 minutes during peak hours, except it also overlaps with Route 61X. So in the morning, you've actually got a peak period where there's a bus every 10 to 12 minutes for about 2 hours, and ditto going back home in the afternoon. So if you're living this, you will walk. You will get rained on. Greg mentioned that what you really want as a rider is something like a great covered bus stop. So I used to work in Middletown when I lived in Warren, and I took the bus to and from work every day, very efficient, except there was no covered bus stop. So when I went for my first interview, I got poured on waiting for the bus home. For my second interview, I got poured on waiting for the bus home. And when I went to sign all of my paperwork accepting my job, I got poured on the way home. It happens, like you will get wet. buy an umbrella. It's all right. So these circles are half-mile circles. So that's roughly, I don't know, a 10-minute walk if you're a slow walker. You can walk anywhere in the part of Warren where people live in 20 minutes, end to end. You can walk from approximately my office up on the Capitol to the jewelry district, 20 minutes. Honestly, I've been driving to work for the first time in a year and a half this week, and it's 5 minutes quicker than walking. So the catch is that you do have to plan your day out slightly better or at all. But this is where we get into the realm of fun stuff. I call these things transit hacks, where you can learn cool things about how to sort of increase the efficiency of how you get around. So the example I have here is Route 60. So normally what you would do on this bus, if you're going from, say, Warren to the RIPTA office, you would take Route 60 into Providence. You would go up Main, sort of around the northern edge of downtown, into Kennedy Plaza, and you'd have to go through Burnside Park and all of Kennedy Plaza to get on Route 20 to go to RIPTA. So what you can do to shave about 20 minutes off your trip in the morning is get off at the courthouse on Main Street and walk 3 blocks to Waybosset and get on the bus there. So that doesn't show up on maps. It doesn't show up on Google when you tell it you're trying to go from one place to the other. But when you sort of make this a component of your life, these are the things that you pick up on. So if we're talking about historic preservation, everything in this picture, which is again Water Street in Warren, is over 200 years old. It's all full, and about these first 4 buildings house about 30 people total. And that's enough. I mean, this is, again, on the population map, this was a dark red. So what we can do is point out here, this building, which looks pretty rough even in this image, is actually being renovated right now. I was in Warren last week. It's got new siding on half of it, new windows. So we're turning an empty building into a full building. That's all it takes. That is historic preservation. So the unfortunate reality in Rhode Island is that we've done some damage to our historic villages. Great news is that there's a ton of opportunity to redevelop, a lot of infill opportunity, and these are areas that are already tied into sewer lines, they're already tied into water lines. There's no deviation for police or fire or trash pickup. I mean, these are areas that cost the municipality virtually nothing to extend service to. And they generate tax revenue, they generate vibrancy in your downtown. Everything covered in a box on this slide is a surface parking lot. So even though this is one of the densest areas in the entire state, there's still all of this vacant room. And so TOD, as Greg said, doesn't need to be a building in the middle of a field. It doesn't need to be a building 6 blocks away from anything useful. It can be what used to be a parking lot. The catch here is that every single parking lot in this slide is required with current zoning. So where the real work comes in as a municipality is rethinking those parking lots. I can tell you, I lived here for a year and change. I drove, I don't know, 6 times. You can walk to everything. You can take the bus to everything. It is absolutely, in an area like this, not necessary to drive. Everyone would survive without that parking. So the other thing we need to talk about is expansion, because in a perfect world, your dense downtown fills up. Maybe you redevelop all of those parking lots. Now what? You don't want to go taller, so you have to go out. Fine. So what you can do, again with zoning and with some careful form-based code design maybe, is replicate that historic village. You can expand in the same form that you have right now that you're trying to preserve and that you're trying to enhance. So there are some keys to that. You need to have a connected street network, unlike this delightful tangle. And you need to be okay with having kind of a hard edge. Your village should be a village and then not be a village. It doesn't need to be a smooth fade where everything slowly gets less and less dense out until you end up in Exeter. It's okay to have housing and shops and then not. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Thank you, Drew.